Hi, welcome back to Mokum Studio going live from Sydney. I'm sorry we're a week late. I had a cold, but I've tested negative, so I'm allowed back. And we're really thrilled to be here. And I'm Stephanie Moffat, Mokum's Design Director.
Hi, I'm Annie, Mokum's Product Developer, and we welcome back Bridget.
Hello.
Who is joining us for our third and final live Q&A session on textile testing. We hope that these sessions have been able to provide you with a little bit more understanding and insight into the various testing topics that we've covered.
Before we get started, I'd like to highlight our woven industry training manual. This has an entire chapter dedicated to all of the testing processes that we have been going through, so abrasion, colour fastness, and also today's hot topic of seam slippage and pilling.
Yeah, so as we've discussed in our previous sessions, testing provides really critical information through our development process around recommended usage and also appropriate care and maintenance for a product. We work with an external testing house in Melbourne, and they're really conservative with their results, which then ensures our results are very conservative.
So as I mentioned before, the previous videos that we have done with the testing processes, which is abrasion, Martindale, Weizenbeek, colour fastness, UV, laundering, they are all available on our IGTV section of Instagram and also our YouTube channel. So if you're keen to check up on those, please check them out. And today we're going to be talking about pilling and seam slippage.
Yes.
Let's get into it. Annie, what is pilling?
So pilling is, simply put, the formation of small fluffy balls of fibre that sit on a fabric surface. So basically, as a fabric is subjected to daily wear and abrasion, any loose surface fibres can become entangled to create these balls, or what the industry recognise as pills.
What causes these pilling balls?
Well, firstly, it's not always the result of being a defective fabric, and it's often an external fibre source that comes into contact with the fabric. And this can be worsened through a combination of variables such as atmospheric conditions, external sources like clothing and other furnishings, and as well as a lack of care and maintenance. And the way to tell if it's a foreign source of fibre is if the pills are obviously a different colour to your sofa. That's a true indication that you've got something else adhering.
A throw or
Yeah, absolutely.
Another cause can be the absence of an internal cushion lining or an upholstery lining. So this barrier cloth or lining stops Tetron or a similar cushion filling from migrating through the fabric and creating a fibre source for pilling to occur.
Do all fabrics pill?
No, not all, but it does occur, and if it does occur, it's like an initial shedding, and it will happen in the first 4 to 6 months after installing your textile, and it can be successfully removed within on-site using a handheld battery-operated depilling or lint shaver, and then. Basically, if reoccurrence after this trimming does happen, it will be to a lesser extent and it will subside over time, but you might need to then do a subsequent 1 or 2 depills, and then that should be it, and that's a sign that it is just initial shedding.
Yeah.
Does the composition impact on the likelihood that a fabric may or may not pill?
Yeah, it can. And an example of this is woolen textiles can often have, and it is an inherent characteristic, particularly a felted wool. We do find that there can be some initial shedding with a felted wool, and this is not deemed to be a fabric fault. Again, it's an inherent characteristic, and it's much like your area rug or your new carpet. You have, when it's installed, you'll have initial shedding, and it requires a lot more vacuuming, and then it will subside. A woolen felt is much like the same, and a simple and gentle depill will not impact on or it won't damage the fabric, and it won't affect the performance of the cloth.
It's much like a woolen jumper. If you've ever owned a woolen jumper, you'll know that in those friction areas, sometimes under the arm, that's where you see that pilling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but
and
it's just a conversation that has to be addressed, I think, with the customer, again, managing customer expectations, because wool specifically is a fantastic product.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
temperature regulating, it's inherently fire retardant, it's soft, it's a natural fibre.
It's beautiful.
It's malleable.
Yeah, it's malleable, it's super flexible. So because of even though it's got those great properties, it's just good to know that it is slightly more prone to pilling.
Yeah, and you're right, you just have to speak confidently to that.
Yeah, and what we would recommend if a wool product, particularly a felted wool, goes into a commercial setting, that should then be the care and maintenance and an occasional depull, particularly at the beginning of the installation of the project, should be written into the building's care and maintenance instructions, much like you were regularly vacuum your floor. You need to manage your and support the textiles as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about the pilling test. How's it performed?
Sure. So a pilling test will measure and determine a fabric's resistance to pilling or fuzzing under abrasion. It's actually tested on the same machine as the Martindale abrasion test. It's called the Martindale machine, but the biggest difference is that in this case, instead of the test fabric being rubbed against a standard abradant, being either a cotton duct or a wire mesh, it's actually rubbed against a piece of the same fabric. So for the pilling test, these two swatches are rubbed together in the same figure 8 motion for a certain number of cycles, normally about 1,000 or 2,000 cycles. And at this point, the fabric is taken off the machine, and any change in surface appearance or any fuzzing is measured and compared against a series of standardized images to deem a result. The result is measured against a scale of 1 to 5. A 1 would represent severe pilling or a fail result, and a 5 would represent no pilling. A higher number obviously indicates better resistance against pilling, and for most textiles we receive a 4 to 5. That does, as Stephanie just mentioned, does sometimes depend on the composition, but in most cases a 4 to 5 is the result that we achieve.
Do you have any advice to help avoid or just manage pilling?
Well, sure, all fabrics require care and maintenance, as we've talked about, but I'm going to get on my vacuuming soapbox. And it actually is one of the best things you can do to mitigate pilling, as dirt is an abradant and it can damage your furniture if it's not removed, and it can be a huge contributing factor to pilling. So we recommend vacuuming regularly, and it also keeps your house nice and clean.
So moving on to seam slippage, what is this lovely thing?
So seam slippage is the pulling apart or the separation of yarns within a textile along a seam or a join. In most cases, the yarns don't actually break, they just stretch and open up and leave a really unattractive gap along that join line.
What causes seam slippage?
Well, it can be the result of a poorly constructed fabric, but more often we find that it's the result of poor manufacturing, and it can be 3 factors. Firstly, insufficient seam allowance, and even worse if that seam allowance hasn't been overlocked. It can be also the number of stitches and an inadequate strength and length of stitches. And third and finally, if specified or and it hasn't been reinforced with the reinforced upholstery seams, then you can have
the ultimate trifecta.
Yeah, the worst case scenario basically if all 3 are not adhered to.
Yeah, and usually seam slippage occurs on joins that are subjected to the most pressure and the most weight. And this is, of course, seat cushions and armrests as well. And it's important to understand when you're specifying your textiles that some furniture frames do put more stress on a fabric seam. And this is definitely the case for more rigid frames like a tub chair, or, of course, a frame with fixed seat cushions. If you can imagine a sofa with loose cushions, any heavy load and the cushions and the seams will just move with the load. But if it's actually fixed to that frame, all of that pressure will come onto the seam and the join.
Does composition play a part in seam slippage?
Yeah, it does. Like pilling, certain fibres do not react as well when applied when a heavy load is applied, and one of those is linen. It's a very smooth, lustrous fibre, so it can be more susceptible to seam slippage. However, though, it can mean that it's still utterly appropriate. And we will note if we think there is a likelihood of seam slippage with a certain fibre or construction, we will note to reinforce the upholstery seams.
We actually see that on our sampling and also online for certain products. So what does reinforce upholstery seams mean?
Firstly, it doesn't deem it to be an inferior product. It simply means it's an inherent characteristic, and as part of the manufacturing process, it needs just some additional manufacturing to get the best result from that textile. And so it is a tape that's stitched onto the seam, and it simply gives it extra support. And who doesn't want a bit of extra support? Yeah.
Is there a remedy for seam slippage? Can you fix it once it starts?
It is difficult to fix seam slippage once it occurs. In almost all instances of severe seam slippage, it will require the furniture to be reupholstered or recovered, unfortunately. And it's really important to ascertain the cause of the seam slippage. If it can be identified as being a result of inadequate manufacturing, then you'd really need to work with your upholsterer to ensure that appropriate techniques are being adhered to, and definitely the use of reinforcing upholstery seams if required. But if the seam slippage is clearly related to a fault of the fabric or a result of that particular composition or construction, then you will need to reselect an alternative fabric that is more appropriate to that particular frame and that particular environment and job as well.
That's why we talk so much about the specification triangle and the importance of that. So it's about having conversations with your textile supplier and your furniture manufacturer to make sure that the right fabric is being specified for that frame. You want to maximise the performance of your cloth, and our recommendations are what will help you make the right decision.
Yeah, definitely. It's so important to have those conversations proactively rather than trying to fix an inappropriate specification later on. It becomes a lot more expensive and disappointing.
Stressful. Yeah.
Can we talk about the seam slippage test and how that's performed?
Yeah, sure. So a seam slippage test will, of course, measure a fabric's resistance to the yarn's opening or slipping under pressure along a join. So in this test, 2 fabric swatches, the test fabric, are sewn together in a standardized seam, and then the machine pulls these 2 pieces of fabric apart in an equal and opposite force. And any opening along that join will be measured while it's being pulled apart at maximum force. And according to the Australian standards for upholstery, any seam opening or any gap along that seam slippage needs to be no greater than 6 millimeters. And of course, a lower result indicates a smaller opening and therefore a greater resistance to seam slippage.
Why don't we list the pilling and seam slippage results on our sampling?
Well, generally, there would be too much detail that you'd need to put within the sampling, because it's we analyse a multitude of test results, and the most important thing is to look at our recommended usage. So in order for a product to come into our range, for upholstery, there's a whole criteria of tests that we do based on the Australian standard, and we rate the recommended usage based on their rating system of heavy duty commercial, heavy duty residential, so on and so forth, and as well as our knowledge of the construction and our knowledge of how products are going to perform. We always take a conservative view, so even if the test results are higher, and we have an understanding sometimes that a product will perform a certain way, we'll always take the conservative road. So that usage is our stake in the ground, and which we will stand behind, and so that is the most important thing for the specifier to look at. And in the case of seam slippage, if the best indication of whether we believe additional manufacturing is required will be a warning on the label to say to reinform the upholstery seam, or there's other warnings that we'll put in place for other products. And so the combination of the warning and the recommended usage are your key information for specification.
And there would be a misconception, I think, if we did put these specific results on our labels, because no individual test should ever be looked at in isolation. Like Stephanie said, it's about taking into account all of the tests.
It's a holistic
for us to
review.
Make that decision. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And that goes back as well, again, my soapbox to managing customer expectations, analysing their environment, their expectations, and there's always a correct product. It's always the right product for that space. So it's just about investigating all the key pieces to put the puzzle together.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really appreciated while working on this series, Bridget, your perspective around your experience with customers and in turn with the end user, and that's helped inform our conversation. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks
I
for
know
having
you'll
me.
miss doing this. And we'll be back in 2 weeks' time on the 21st of July, and we're going to head back to the creative side, and we're going to start talking about our next Mokum new collection, which is Ikigai, which is sort of a wellness concept based on some Japanese lifestyle principles, which are totally pertinent to what the world's going through right now.
Yeah.
And we look forward to discussing the theme in 2 weeks' time.
And this will line up with the launch of the first few products of that range.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks so much.
We'll see you then.
Kia kaha.
Bye.
Bye.